Give me exterior lights.
Commander, I think you should hear this.
Pradesh Tim.
Commander.
Lo Tanug.
Commander.
Nageb. Enter the lair of the Leviathan.
Commander.
There you will find the path to the gateway.
Commander.
Yes, Mrs. Packard, what is it?
I'm picking up something on the hydrophone I think you should hear.
Put it on speakers. What is it, a pod of whales?
Bigger.
Is it just me, or is that getting louder?
Oh, whatever it was, it's gone now.
Tighten our search pattern and slow it down.
Jiminy Christmas! It's a machine!
We're free. All ahead full.
It's engineering on 4.
Rourke! We took a big hit down here and we're taking our water fast. I don't want to be around when it hits the boilers.
How much time do we have?
20 minutes if the bulkhead holds. We better make that fine.
Hang on.
It's only a grease trap, it's just like a sink. It's only a grease trap, it's just like a sink!
It sounds like we hit bows pretty hard because of the combination of changes, and maybe we did, and maybe we'll have to revisit those and pull those back, right? But actually bows are still very capable of doing what they are intended to do, which is have really long range and deal a ton of damage in a single shot, right? Like they're great support weapons, they're great team shotting weapons. They can still do that stuff in the sandbox. They're just slightly less frustrating to play against.
It's true, bows needed a nerf. However, with the changes that just happened on March 5th, the bow problem wasn't solved. It was forcefully pushed aside without any satisfactory solutions. Yes, they nerfed the damage. Some will think that's way too much, or that they were not nerfed enough. Well, if they get nerfed too much, well, that means Bungie will buff them again. As it stands, bows were nerfed in 3 meaningful ways. Emis's drop-off at longer ranges is fair, but we also got a nerf to overall damage, player health increase, and an indirect nerf through the new special ammo system. I'll explain the special ammo economy nerf later, but in short, to clarify how the special ammo changes affect bows, it is nearly impossible in a current sandbox to rely on a special weapon as a close-range deterrent for pushing, where bows now collapse very harshly, which means you are pretty much always better off running another primary that can mitigate close-range push. Let's discuss the issue with bows. There are 2 ways people use bows. One way is passive, cautious, laying it down with Wishender, quick swapping bow to another primary. This way, the player is assisted by wall hacks. They put their confidence in the first shot, easily hitting and dealing sniper body shot damage, and also puts confidence in the weapon they swap to get the kill, because the bow lowered the amount of shots required. This type of player is very common. Probably 90% of the player base that puts on bows does this. The other type, the 10%, is more aggressive. Their objective is to reach the middle of the map as fast as possible, hit a shot, usually very confident that no matter what, they're dealing half damage, and the next shot of the bow will kill, almost guaranteed after 1 second. And if that fails, they rely on a shotgun or melee. No matter what happens during that second, if they manage to stay alive, they're guaranteed a trade if they don't miss. In the present day, nerfing the damage profiles of bows has shifted the style of gameplay even more to the first method, passive, staying back and playing cautious. To be fair, bows will probably not die, however, let's discuss the issue that they will continue to cause. Here's the problem with bows. They replace snipers, that's it. The first shot is always too easy to hit, and Oathkeepers giving infinite hold doesn't help the situation.
I think bow swapping is probably one of the better examples of it, because like, if you play someone who's good at bow swapping, there's very little that you can do to counter it, right? It was pretty forgiving to do in the previous sandbox, where you could like, you know, crit with a bow, which is super easy, follow up with a body shot, you barely even have to aim. You effectively just vaporize the person on the other side who's receiving that. We want to limit that effectiveness like just a little bit, right?
Sure.
Because that, playing against that, especially at a high level.
What's interesting is that as I've been watching how the meta shifts between game modes, I notice how the introduction of Checkmate has specifically sparked a rise in the usage of Wishender. Let me give you some context about bows and their recent resurgence. Previously, before March 5, in Checkmate, there was no special ammo in the beginning. However, there was one high damage primary that effectively replaced snipers, had wall hacks, and therefore gave you an instant advantage. From the very conception of Checkmate, Wishender was the biggest, most obvious answer, because the way Checkmate was conceived to encourage double primary loadouts, it encouraged people to use Wishender and quickswap even more. In the present day, the main pain point of Wishender was not solved. Bungie stated they refused to remove wall hacks from Wishender, and the way it works now isn't nearly nerfed enough. You still get free wall hacks, and you can still easily reset your timer. It will continue to foster stigma against an entire weapon archetype. It will continue to overshadow other options. Bows will continue to get nerfed because of outliers like Wishender. And by the way, Wishender deals 2 ticks of damage. You would expect with this bow nerf the 15% damage would be applied to both of these numbers. Nope, you guessed wrong. The second tick of damage that Wishender deals, which is usually around 30, was not nerfed, which means that you can still 1 crit 1 body with Wishender. Of all bows, Wishender survives this nerf, making all other bows irrelevant, as if they weren't irrelevant enough. And yes, I made sure I was in the intended game mode to test this in Control, where bows are supposed to have minus 15% and Guardians plus 30 HP. I tested regular bows in there, and bows deal 128 to the head. If I were to give my opinion on how Wishender should be nerfed, I genuinely think that giving it perma-radar or even enhanced perma-radar will be more balanced than just straight up wall hacks. It would still give enough of a benefit in PvP, and you could let wall hacks only work in PvE. However, let's discuss these bow nerfs. What's strange is that bows continue to have infinite range, and this is contrary to what we expected out of a TWAB last year, when Bungie announced that they will introduce damage or range falloff. Taking into account all the changes that just happened, theoretically you can still sit at the back of the map with Wishender, deal a lot of damage with a high damage primary, and stay far, far away from opponents. It's just a little more difficult to hit your shots at range due to decreased aim assist falloff. Anyway, bows received an overall minus 30%, we're counting the minus 15% together with the 30 HP addition, which is technically minus an additional 15%. This means you have to hit 2 crits to kill. Ignore the game modes where you can still 1 crit 1 body, you're not supposed to be able to do that. Bungie addressed that in a tweet. So what's the problem? Isn't it a good thing that Bungie encouraged precision aiming? Yes, it is a good thing, and I agree with taking more skill to aim, and I will never complain if aim assist is nerfed or that hitboxes would be lowered. I encourage it. However, with the way bows work, if you want to use them as their own standalone primary, without quick swapping, several things need to be considered in addition, because now we have to consider how capable bows are when placed up against every other primary. Why is that important? Isn't that a suboptimal way of using bows? It is. However, it shouldn't be that way. Because of how it stands, they can't duel on their own if they don't peek shoot. No, the problem is another. I know what Bungie wants to do. With these changes, Bungie intends to put bows in the same category of primaries as handcannons, pulses, and scouts. They want them to be dueling weapons. However, what Bungie, or anyone else for that matter, doesn't seem to understand is that nerfing the double body capabilities of the slow firing precisions, as well as nerfing the one crit, one body capabilities of lightweights, or just bows in general now, is effectively killing their dueling capabilities entirely. So if I don't agree with their upcoming changes, what do I think should happen with bows instead? Well, please stay with me and try to consider the following changes. I need to be very clear here. Currently, bows are unbalanced due to how easy it is to hit the first shot with them and still deal maximum damage. The way I would expect Bungie to change them in a way that they won't replace snipers, to give them a skill gap and a learning curve, as well as encourage people to actually get better at shooting them shot after shot, I would recommend these changes. TLDR.
Alright, here's the bow changes. Range drop off for aim assist and damage, decrease perfect draw duration, decrease full draw damage, remove indefinitely draw from Oathkeeper. Wishender, wall hack would pulsate once every 3 seconds instead of infinite.
The perfect draw window should be way shorter. And it's important to understand this. This is a mechanic where the damage you deal with a bow drops down the longer you hold the arrow. Overall, they should make the perfect draw damage window much shorter and harsher, and the damage fall off of holding the draw should become much more unforgiving. For example, from 150 damage dropping to like 50 damage in the span of a few milliseconds, be it half a second or shorter. This would heavily discourage people to use a bow like a sniper or a quick swapping tool. This will punish players of holding down a lane forever and still deal maximum damage. Consequently, Oathkeepers should never hold infinite draw, because it negates the perfect draw window and the skill requirement for pacing your shots. Give it instead some other benefits, maybe mobility. Another nerf from Hinra, a player with over 40,000 bow kills and is part of the 10%, said,
Add a much more noticeable damage and aim assist drop off. Right now, bows reward the player too much for being too passive, allowing them to hit insane amount of damage over longer distances, making it hard to play around. Ideally, a precision hit from a bow should deal 100 damage at the longest possible drop off, allowing overshields and healing effects to counter their lethality. So at the moment, I can just sit 40 meters behind cover, hit them for full damage, and I still have the aim assist to hit them in the head just fine. So in the future, maybe they can implement a damage and aim assist drop off starting at like 20 meter and then 30 meter and then 40 meter, allowing bows to deal less damage and less accurate over longer distances. And the reason for this is that draw time on a bow typically don't matter if you're playing the bow passively. You can just draw the bow behind cover and then peek. So a reasonable nerf is to make the bow two-shot at a very minimum stage, where things like overshield and healing could counter this type of playstyle.
What Hinra also tries to argue is that bows need perks to give users more incentive to use other than just accuracy. As it stands, most perks in the first and second column are overshadowed by either elastic string or compact arrow shaft. These tweaks alone could change the way people look at bows drastically. This wouldn't kill their effectiveness in PvP like the current changes just did. I hate making comparisons between a game and real life, but to be clear on what we mean by these changes, unironically, if Bungie made it so that you have to release the arrow immediately as you draw, otherwise you'd lose damage needed to kill, just like in real life where you have to release the arrow immediately as you draw, otherwise you'd lose the power, we'd be very happy with that. Again, done right, this would take practice, precise timing and muscle memory in order to make them deal the intended damage. Otherwise, let us be stuck with dealing 50 damage per body if we don't time our shots properly. Again, work on the perfect draw being much harsher. Currently, bows are just worse handcannons or worse pulse rifles. If you miss a headshot, you have to 1 crit 2 body in 2.5 seconds. Compared to before, we can't be aggressive anymore. We can't bow into melee. We can't bow into shotgun either because of the special ammo economy requiring a primary to progress special ammo. We can't duel any primary when flinch, sudden changes in movement, rubber banding, and hit reg issues have something to say about hitting headshots. Those things affect bows more than any other weapon due to the time it takes to fire another shot. Bows can kind of survive by becoming double primary loadouts, being paired with high handling builds with SMGs, sidearms, auto rifles, or pulse rifles, effectively solidifying their status as sniper replacement. But a good player using either of those primaries will never need a bow anyway. I'm gonna go ahead and say it, and this will give me hate, but it's just true. It's easier to peek shoot with a 120 than it is with a bow. Not only do you have faster time to kill with a 120, but you also flinch the other target more often. A good hand cannon user will never miss.
Isn't it crazy? It's so depressing though, like getting hit by a igneous hammer for 88 to the head, knowing that I'm hitting them for 86 to the body because they're like, you know, which the body while getting tapped for 88 to the head every half second.
Missing the first or second shot either from flinch or movement will increase your time to kill to 2 whole seconds. If I hit a body shot, there's no point in continuing the engagement anymore because I'm already half health from an enemy. I can't finish even with a headshot no matter how hard I try. The bigger hitbox is also a problem. 120s don't get an arrow stuck in the wall for jiggle peeking. With a bow, I'm forced to step out of cover a bit to hit a bow shot properly. This is an issue people never consider when saying, "Just peek shoot with bows is the best peek shooting weapon," when actually, it's just conditioned by the environment. Peek shooting isn't always the answer. It doesn't make bows a better weapon in that regard. For a weapon that charges relatively slowly, the longer period of time you have between shots, the harder it is to land precision shots in high-level play. This isn't a problem if you are pacing your shots with any other weapon, because the command to input is very short and simple, and while it is true that the first shot of a bow is very easy to land, the second one requires more precise timing, where if you don't hit the head, or if you don't hold click long enough to deal max damage, you're dead. The command to input for a bow is different because you're drag aiming, and drag aiming is more difficult to do if you're also attempting to pace your shots and strafe or jump at the same time. This small difficulty can be overcome by flicking, but flick aiming severely cuts down on your accuracy and capability to land headshots. Again, this affects aggro playstyles, where you have to act fast. This is something some of us consider very fun, because if we miss a shot, we're dead. But if we can manage our movement, abilities, and dexterity, bows can be very fun to use when used aggressively, as opposed to the usual. In any case, these changes officially place bows in a very passive playstyle category, where the only option is to sit back, play your distance, and hope that you never have to duel with a primary, because pulses, hand cannons, and SMGs will dominate every engagement, and Wishender will always be a better option to use over all bows entirely. Again, I'm not complaining about having to aim. I heavily dislike aim assist in this game, and bullet magnetism. I wish they didn't exist, because my shots would be better off without any of that. Right now I'm thinking of a clip where I try to shoot someone's feet but the arrow pokes their body aim assist cones and it hits the wall. I'm trying to explain why expecting to hit bow crits, especially 2 crits in high level play, is simply an unrealistic expectation regardless of skill. Now let's discuss the way bow loadouts were hit in the new special ammo system. To get special back, you need to get primary weapon kills. This means that swapping from a bow to a glaive, GL, or shotgun will not refund any special ammo and will not progress your special ammo bar. Those loadouts are no longer viable. In fact, any loadout that requires you to swap weapons from a primary to a special is not viable anymore. Sure, you can get points by fulfilling objectives, but that is nowhere near good enough because we aren't able to keep up with an enemy that is simply just using sniper hand cannon or sniper SMG loadouts. They can sniper body into primary and get the special back more efficiently. By the way, if we compare March 5 with Year 1 vanilla, back then we had specials in the heavy slot. Despite the fact that the primary weapon variety was smaller, you didn't have to give up a second primary to run a special weapon. New changes dictate that you have to give up a second primary to run a special, while vanilla Year 1 had 2 primaries and 1 special at the same time. So why would anyone run a bow with a special after March 5 when they usually finish the kill with a special and not be able to progress towards the special ammo meter? Without special ammo, they'll be stuck with one of the worst primaries for dueling, especially at mid to short ranges. Why is it that Bungie fails to understand the problem of a weapon they are balancing, and they continue making changes that obligates people to resort to degenerate playstyles? Bungie, I don't know if you realized, but if anyone ever on any platform at all times, if we see someone do this, we're clicking off that content. We don't tune in again. Playing like this doesn't help anyone get better at the game. It doesn't help anyone have fun, neither the user nor the opponent, and it enforces bad habits like tunnel visioning. People will continue to just do this with bows. This is horseshit, and these changes will continue to encourage this.
7 hours ago, we started this expedition with 200 of the finest men and women I've ever known. We're all that's left. I won't sugarcoat it, gentlemen. We have a crisis on our hands. But we've been up this particular creek before, and we've always come through, paddle or no paddle. I see no reason to change that policy now. From here on in, everyone pulls double duty. Everyone drives, everyone works. Looks like all our chances for survival rest with you, Mr. Thatch. You and that little book.
We're all gonna die.
Okay, people, saddle up.